All right, so this is kind of a test. If this works, it'll count as episode 1 of my podcast.
How did all of this trouble begin?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce myself first and foremost. So my name is Youceff Kabal. My full name is Youceff Kabal.
There's nothing wrong.
But you're out on bond.
No, I'm not.
Starting this podcast kind of to express my thoughts.
Let's talk about the music.
You want to talk about music and you don't want to talk about what happened.
It's going to be a bit of politics, music, because I'm a musician myself, relationships, health, food stuff, and what I eat, and kind of my experiences with that. I want to have some guests, some of my friends. We are on, so
right wing, like Republican, like and like massive, Trump supporters. The kind of Trump supporters that you get aggravated when you meet them. These are like your extremes, like they're your bald eagles and stuff.
Coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, and outbreak in the United States. All right, we are live. Hang on. Yeah, so just because it's the first time I'm using this mic, but here we are. It's May 22nd, going on May 23rd. This is Youceff Kabal, and you're watching the Youceff podcast, episode 5, 6, not sure, somewhere in there. But basically, so I know there's been a while since the last time, but and yeah, if you have any questions, and when you see like podcasters with these on, it's just because they want to hear what's going into the mic, and if you're just talking to the mic, you don't hear yourself, and you just want to make sure you're like loud enough, and it guarantees that you have a better volume throughout. So, but basically, yeah, I was watching the Jimmy Dore show, and they have this thing called Corona Money Talk, which has this guy Dylan Ratigan, who used to be have his own show on MSNBC. He's like a financial guy, and so they're talking about the CARES Act. I suppose about the upcoming HEROES Act as well. But the CARES Act is the one that's most important here. It was passed on March 27th, literally signed into law March 27th by President Trump. And I mean, I really strongly suggest you go to the Jimmy Dore show. I'll have a link below. To their YouTube, and you get informed about the CARES Act and its terrible effect on the economy. But because Dylan Ratigan does a great job at kind of explaining the situation, but essentially it got to a point there in the middle where how to say, like, I don't know, it brought an idea to my mind, something that it just shocked me. I was like, holy shit, kind of like mind blown moment. And it was essentially that the news media, especially the mainstream news media, occupy a much bigger role in our society than we attribute to them, at least consciously. You think of the news like, oh, it's just the news, it's like blah blah blah, but you don't watch the news because it's like super biased and all that, and that's fine. But the thing is, the news, and I'll get to that conclusion a bit later, but in any good English paper, you want to state your thesis statement in the introduction. So basically, yeah, the statement is that essentially the news especially mainstream media. I'm talking like CNN, um, MSNBC, the New York Times. Actually, even Fox News is kind of out of that. But so CNN, like ABC, like local Fox News, I guess maybe, but not Fox News. Fox News, I guess, is too radical, too red. But those news channels, especially New York Times, Washington Post, so newspapers as well, obviously, Wall Street Journal, they occupy a bigger role, and that role is that they actually write history. So basically, if it's not a story on the New York Times or on the Washington Post or in the Wall Street Journal, it's almost like it didn't happen. And reason why that kind of came to light was, and something that we'll get to later on the video here, is that the Tara Reade allegations, right? That Joe Biden sexually assaulted Tara Reade back in 1993. Those allegations for weeks were not covered in any newspapers, and the only time that it actually reached the New York Times involved the New York Times just smearing Tara Reade, basically saying that, kind of attacking her character a lot. It didn't actually say whether it happened or it didn't, or not to believe her, but it was a very kind of like a catty piece, I guess. And that might be a sexist term, and for that I apologize. But yeah, I mean, there's a trend that generally women attack women more than we think, more than we grant them or hold them accountable for. We say a lot of things about men, on women, of course, but women do kind of, like my mom always told me, like women are, or like girls are girls' worst enemies. And essentially when another, and so the reason why I bring this up is because the piece is written by a woman who works at the New York Times. I don't have her name, but she attacks Tara Reade in a way that a man couldn't attack her. And so it's actually very psychological. And I mean, I'll never understand fully how much exactly what its effects are, but if you're a girl or woman or whatever, someone who identifies in the feminine, and you read that piece, it's gonna have an impact on you. It's gonna kind of make you think twice that should something happen to you, you wouldn't want a piece like that to be written about you. So basically, it's gonna prevent you from going public with your story, with what happened to you, because you don't want to get smeared in the New York Times. And it sets the example as to what we do to survivors, and it's really terrible. And it shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. And it's really I guess you'd call them the alternative news media, like Jimmy Dore. A lot of the YouTube shows, The Hill, um, you know, uh, Moderate Rebels, Empire Files, Joe Rogan, even the Corbett Report. Yeah, all those guys. And also in like an online newspaper media, like perhaps The Intercept. Basically, I'm going to show you this Wikipedia article where all those sources covered the Tara Reade story as soon as it came out, because it was an interview by Katie Halper. She's like a very credible source within the alternative news media. And she basically just interviewed Tara Reade. It was just a standard interview. And, just because nobody else would cover or listen to Tara Reade. So she listened to her, and yeah, that's how it came up. But so it was like basically weeks before that these things were on, and people were wondering, well, like, when's they going to get to CNN, when's they going to get to the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, and it was literally weeks. And basically, it wasn't. They almost, the thing is, even Biden denied it altogether. They almost didn't answer. They only answered to Fox, and it wasn't Biden himself. It was his campaign staff. So yeah, basically, what Biden was trying to do, and it's really kind of fucked up that he was trying to do this, is basically starve. And for sure, I have no doubt that there were discussions and behind the camera that, hey, you can't run this story. Just as much as they could, as long as they could, or like, you need to delay the story, don't bring it up. Run everything else like coronavirus stuff like 24/7. Don't bring up this Biden stuff. I have no doubt that those conversations happen behind the camera. So, I mean, essentially what you're trying to do is because, as long as the story doesn't hit, those news channels, then technically, well, according to Wikipedia, and you'll see here, according to Wikipedia, it's not news. So it basically didn't happen. And so only if something hits CNN, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, or New York Times, one of those, will it actually hold water. And I suppose there's some, credence to that, philosophy, but at the same time, it's very scary to think that, any story that doesn't hit there has no credibility. It's just really a bad philosophy. But I'm gonna. This is the first time I'm using a mic again, and next time I'll try to have like an actual boom cover on it. I'm actually using my boom cover as a mic. I would show you, but it would just make a lot of noise. So, funny enough, you can use your like a boom with like a thing mic, like a adjustable, which most of them are adjustable, I believe. You can use it as a mic stand. So, but yeah, so I'm gonna share my screen with you real quick, and I just want you to watch like 2 minutes. We're gonna watch two 2-minute segments of the Dreaming Door video, and then I'll show you the Wikipedia article, and hopefully you can follow me on this, and we'll come to the conclusion, and that'll be that. So again, this is the still video. I recommend you watch it. Basically, the Fed chairman went on 60 Minutes and talked about the impact of the CARES Act, and essentially said that they have an unlimited amount of money, which, yeah. But for some reason, they're not giving any of it to the people, although they could. They're just really choosing not to. And so Dylan Radigan's going to talk a little bit, but Dream Door asks a very important question here, and so yeah, let's just listen.
When you shut down an economy for a biological crisis, is to then put that economy on life support in a way that's much cheaper by putting in the UBI and the access to healthcare. Like, it's just, there's a reason every other country in the world did it, and it's not because they're liberal or conservative. It's because they're not vicious, murderous beasts. I don't know. I don't mean I don't know how. I don't even know what to say, Jimmy. I mean,
I know. I'm beside myself too, and I watch other lefty news shows, and they really have a very unsophisticated view of what's happening right now. They don't really understand what's coming, and then their natural reflex is to protect politicians, which is such a childish thing. What do you say about? I mean, do you notice that? Do you notice people still? I don't know how close you monitor the news these days, but or the the personalities, but do you find it strange? Of course I knew that the corporate news wouldn't give the correct breakdown of what's happening, which is why we do a show. But I'm still surprised to find people defending politicians like a fan club instead of understanding the situation. So Bernie should have definitely put a hold on that bill. Just to go over one more time, it's not a Rubik's cube. Bernie, as you said on the show before, what's the point of having the power to shut down a bill and put a hold on it if you don't use it, right?
If you're going to use it once in your life, after what we learned in 2008, and when the obvious answer is UBI and healthcare, first, not last, first. Like the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that there's UBI and healthcare, and then and then in parallel, you have to immediately flood the system with money in order to prevent a financial crisis. So you don't have another compounding crisis.
Right.
So Powell, excuse me, did what he had to do, because it's again, it's not. It's like, you know how like if you're in an airplane and like if these fighter jets and then it's
All right, so that's the first part. I think it's pretty compelling. And then kind of Radigan will go on here for a while, but yeah, basically, the CARES Act basically gave about $6 trillion to the banks in various forms. Basically, the Fed bought like a bunch of treasury notes, basically, which are promises to pay. So the U.S. is basically promising to pay back the Federal Reserve. In exchange, it gives it an infinite amount of money, and $6 trillion of that went straight to the banks, which then provided loans to big companies like whoever, Target, Walmart, whatever, that were, or I mean, maybe not Target, Walmart, but because I mean, I know they did get money, but like, think about maybe like hotels, like Hilton and all those places that, yeah, but I don't know. There's if you go into the Dreamy Door video, they explain it much better than I am right now. But the thing is, Bernie has been, I actually voted for it. He was in the Senate. He's a U.S. senator for the state of Vermont, and the bill passed 96 to nothing. So basically, no one voted against the CARES Act. And Donald Trump was like, "Congratulations, America, you did it." And it was actually kind of, although some people think that it was like a prideful moment, the people that are really dumb thought it was like a prideful moment. But Donald Trump actually didn't mean like, congratulations, like we actually did it. It was like, congratulations. What he really meant to say, and what he said in hiding, because that's what he says. He speaks in hiding. Donald Trump. He basically said, congratulations, you totally fucked yourself. You sold yourself to corporations. Congratulations. Your leaders, like none of your leaders could stand up to us. Not even Bernie. So, or Elizabeth Warren. None of them. They all voted for it. They all voted to bankrupt the country. So, and the thing is that the media is protecting them, especially online media. But it just brings a note on, the fact that this CARES Act, the media is not painting, and they're going to touch on this right here, but like the media is not painting it out to be what it actually is. They're painting it to be like, just even the name of the bill is meant to be deceptive. It means it's like care, but they don't care. They're almost like laughing at you straight in your face. Like they don't give a fuck. But they called it the CARES Act, but it's like totally selling out the country. It's placing $6 trillion, like your kids and my kids and my great grandkids, should I ever have any, in debt. 6 trillion. You owe a couple thousand on your bank account. Imagine owing $1 million. Okay, now imagine owing $1,000,000,000. That's $1 billion. Okay, that's what $1 billion looks like. It's $1,000,000,000. Now imagine owing $1,000,000,000,000. That would be $1 trillion. So it's actually a, a, a million dollars. Okay, it's an insane amount of money, and now we have 6 of them that our kids are just in debt, and it wasn't even none of it went to us. Like none of it, literally none of it went to me or any of us. It all went to our financial sector, insurance companies, all that shit, because they're gonna lose money and they want to prop up the economy. That's why they did it. So, but the media is not painting it to be that way. And we'll see, when we come to a conclusion here, like, that's the thing. They're writing history. And because they say it's like this, because Jimmy Dore is not, on CNN or MSNBC, and for very good reasons. Because if he was, I mean, they couldn't have him because he'd tell the truth, and they don't want anyone to tell the truth. They're all covering. They're all covering for the banks, for corporations. That's who they're covering for. So the news is not really news, and that makes you realize, it's like, damn. So our history, I mean, in 100 years from now, for you and me, it's okay, but for our kids, they'll look back and they'll think, oh, look, the CARES Act was like this great thing that helped us out, but in actuality, because that's what will be written in the books, and then your kids will have to, like, go dig deep into Jimmy Dore videos and realize that, unless they get deleted by Google, which they might down the line, but essentially Google, I mean, your kids will have to search for the truth. In the books, they'll say it's a good thing, but in the truth, Jimmy Dore will tell the truth, but most kids won't bother to go look it up. What should be the case is that the truth be in the textbook, and then someone should go online and check it out, find Jimmy Dore, and confirm, yeah, this is the truth. Okay, and maybe like, if anyone wants to see the false news, I suppose, they could go to CNN or MSNBC, anything like that. But as it stands, they're in charge. They're essentially in charge of writing history. So, I mean, are there any worse people that could be in charge? Anyways, let's listen to Jimmy here.
It is so, and anybody who doesn't share our outrage is either doesn't understand what exactly is going on. I'll just put it that way. They don't understand what's going on, and so you almost can't, be angry at them, because they just have, they watch MSNBC and CNN, and that's what they think is happening, and they don't know any better. It's amazing. So that was.
And even the people that work there, going back to your earlier question, I mean, my experience working inside of both the financial media and the political media for, I guess, 20 years, give or take, there is a remarkably unsophisticated or openly ignorant understanding of any of the things that we are talking about at a level that is profoundly disturbing, which is largely a function of the fact that most of the people that are in the business are in the business because they thought it would be fun to be on television, and they were good at the horse race, whether it's the horse race of which stock is up or down, or which CEO is up or down in the financial world, or which politician is up or down in the political world, or which identity group or sort of offensive coalition is doing something horrible. And so there's a whole generation of journalists who are extremely skilled at, prosecuting why Republicans are terrible, or defending the righteousness of some constituency or another in terms of that type of advocacy, or celebrating the CEO or of whatever company, or vilifying the CEO of whatever company, but it's really all soap opera.
Mm-hmm.
None of it is. It's all just emotional hyperbole. With Jeff Bezos is the greatest CEO that ever lived, or Mark Zuckerberg's the most evil CEO that ever lived, or Bernie Sanders is the greatest leader of our generation, or Donald Trump is the worst, or Bernie Sanders is the worst, and Donald Trump is the best, or whatever it is. All that is really just soap opera. And so you have a population of producers, writers, and broadcasters who do not comprehend in any way, shape, or form the economy. And almost none of them, if not none of them, have ever had to depend on the operation of a small business,
Right.
or of even a medium-sized business for their security. They don't understand, because they've always had corporate health care that's very good. They don't understand the actual cost of health care because it's invisible to them, because it's embedded in their comp packages. And they don't understand the consequences of forcing. I mean, imagine if one of the consequences of the coronavirus was, if you watched television news, your eyes would fall out. So now it's illegal for them to have customers. I bet
Right.
it's
Right.
there's a complete and total absence of comprehension of what's happening. And when people don't comprehend something, their first instinct is to dismiss it as those who are trying to bring it up, it doesn't matter who's trying to bring it up, as either marginal crackpots, whatever the mechanism of dismissiveness is, because their primary interest, although I think frequently not conscious, is simply self-preservation of their own identity and relevance as powerful actors in society, which is really where their social identity lives, at all costs. Whether it's a politician or a prominent journalist, it's kind of all the same sickness.
Yeah. Okay. That's great analysis. I appreciate it.
So that's actually the end of the video, but yeah, I mean, you get the point. The really, this whole thing is compounded by the fact that we have some of the least intellectual people as like running the news, and that's by choice. I think there was like a video recently of Chuck Todd. I didn't know who Chuck Todd was until he came up on Jimmy Dore. And he wasn't there like by himself. Like Jimmy Dore cut a clip because Chuck Todd essentially deceptively portrayed William Barr as this super evil attorney general when and cut the clip. But that's the thing. So not to say that William Barr is like an angel, he's not, but it's like, why cut the clip? It was very misleading. And the thing is, Chuck Todd like doesn't have a university degree. Not to say that you need one to be a journalist, but sometimes like people are like really intelligent and don't go to university, or maybe go briefly and drop out, but the thing is, their intelligence shows even without a university degree, right? And it's often like, wow, like, I can't believe this guy didn't even go to university, because he's so, or she's so smart, but the thing with Chuck Todd is that he's actually like really dumb. And so it's like, oh well, he doesn't have a university degree, so it's like, why is he on the news? Well, it's like, well, he was cherry picked to be on the news. He's there because he's unintelligent. That's literally his lack of intelligence is literally why he's on the news. And that's why, like, because the newscaster is he's just kind of a pawn ultimately in the grand scheme of things. He has people above him. He has like a news producer, executive producers. That's kind of how it there's a chain of command, and the people who decide what goes on the news or what doesn't isn't the news anchor, it's the producer. um and some anchors are, are producers as well, but most of them, especially the ones that are on like mainstream, um like even like super mainstream stuff like MSNBC, CNN, like they don't get to choose. Like they're not their own producer. You just can't be. You basically have to be, have a producer for you until they tell you, hey, we're gonna groom you to be a producer. And even when you become a producer, there's an executive producer on top of you that's kind of calling the shots, and so they determine what gets covered, what doesn't. You know, most of the newscasters, Anderson Cooper, um, basically all of them. I don't know their names because I don't watch their shows, but they knew about the Tara Reade allegations when they broke out. And they just specifically chose to not cover it because their bosses told them not to. And, it's not even that their bosses told them not to, it's that their boss didn't cover it in their instructions. So they were just like, okay, I'm just going to cover what you want me to cover. That's it. And, they just repeat what they're told. Because they lack intelligence, and anyone who had an ounce of intelligence would be like, hey, shouldn't we actually cover this other thing? Like, why isn't, why aren't the Tara Reade allegations in this news coverage that I'm covering? No, but they like, because they lack that intelligence, they're not going to question things, and that's why they're there. So yeah, so just to kind of give you a thought, I mean, the thing is, the reason why this is so bad is because this goes back, I'm not even sure how far back. I mean, there's coverage of the Vietnam War, coverage of World War II, the you know the Korean War, 9/11, the Iraq War. But then it even goes even back, like way, way, way back. I mean, slavery times, like basically it seems like throughout history, the press really has occupied largely this. I mean, I think it used to be back in the day that there were actual how do you call that? A person who studies history, like a historian. Back in the days of Jesus Christ and all that, you had historians. Basically they would write down what happened, and that's it. They would just keep track of things. And it seems like over time that role has been replaced, although there are still historians nowadays, but generally the role's been replaced by these news channels. And the reason why I'm saying that is, I mean, that's what I came to understand, is how Wikipedia gets written. And so let's jump straight to that. I was talking with my friend Troy, and telling him this and that, that they're not covering the Tara Reade allegations. And he's a journalist himself. He has pieces published in Vice and other prominent newspaper like New Times, like Phoenix New Times, LA Times. So we shared the link with me to the talk page of the Wikipedia article. So unless people know, for any like Wikipedia article, behind it there's a talk page, which is if you're like a moderator or someone who spends a lot of time on Wikipedia, maybe you do an edit, maybe you change a word because you think it's like it's not the right, spelling of the word, or maybe catch an error somewhere, or maybe more than that. Maybe you want to add like, sorry, I think I got a splinter. But yeah, maybe you want to add like a news story to some artist or whatever you follow. Like, you'd be basically a Wikipedia moderator. And so if that's you, then you're familiar with the talk page on Wikipedia. That's where the edits happen. And but the talk page, I understand, is basically for whenever there's any debate, and I guess there's larger talk page on these larger articles. And so the Joe Biden article is a very popular article, just like Donald Trump. Basically, any popular politicians, they'd be, their talk pages are probably pretty comprehensive. So, but this is the Joe Biden one, and as you see here, this is the Archive 7, so 2020 presumptive nominee. They're talking about the campaign, suspension of Bernie Sanders' campaign. And so here we are, these new sexual allegations. And just so you understand kind of the format, so you have like one person here, and this is their username is You Can Do Better. They posted this on March 26th at 8 p.m. Then they had an answer by this person, and then they answered back, and then I'm sorry, not this person, Mr. X. And then you have this person, which is, it seems like it's like an IP address. So he's saying, in the wake of new allegations by Reade, which has been covered by many reliable news sources, there's been and will continue to be politicized efforts to remove the information from Wikipedia. Administrators take notice. So basically, and then this guy said, those are not good sources for controversial BLP content. Things like biography. So then he says, Pace Magazine may not be a good source for this. The Intercept does not contain any more perceptible bias than mainstream news sources. Disgruntles readers' feelings that there's bias does not make it so. And then this other guy backs it up. The Intercept does not meet the verifiability standards, WP source, to publish controversial content without confirmation. So again, I mean, it seems like there's this one guy, You Can Do Better. He reappears here quite a bit, and he's kind of asking, why isn't this stuff listed on the Joe Biden page? Then he says, so take note that the current version of the page has removed the mention of Tara Reade entirely. Not only her detailed sexual assault allegations from March of 2020, but also her taking part in the wave of allegations from the spring of 2019. Does anyone support this? So Petrarchan, it is unsupportable and will be taken to the proper notice board if this happens again. So the content in question, this other person, it seems like he's in agreement with You Can Do Better. These two people are in agreement. The content is good. I'm sorry, the content in question is not supported by RS and should be removed ASAP. There is one RS, reliable source, a Business Insider piece that briefly mentions her and a piece that mentions every allegation against Biden. Petrarchan 47 has validated the 24-hour BRD restrictions on this article by immediately restoring the challenge content. So Petrarchan answers here, I did not wholesale restore the content as you claimed on my talk page. I improved some sources, which was your less than informative edit summary claiming all sources were insufficient. And why did you remove Biden's long-standing rebuttal? This feels like a careless act, your wholesale removal of an hour's worth of my work. Please take your time and comment on each complaint source removal so that I can address them. So Mr. X here comes back. So can someone show several impeccable sources to demonstrate that this meets WP due weight? We need to steer we need to steer very clear of, I guess. So he meant to say steer. We need to steer very clear of sources like Base Magazine and The Intercept, in my opinion. We also need to adhere to what sources actually write. If this worth including, it should trivial to find good sources. Seems like they have issues writing there. A lot of skipping words. Should have been, if this is worth including, it should be trivial to find, or it shouldn't be trivial. Anyways, this guy here comes back. I think it's Petrarchan. Sorry, 1 second. Says, can you explain why you think The Intercept fails WP reliable source? You can search the NB archives for sections supporting your stance. Otherwise, I would open a new thread on the matter. To my knowledge, it is considered highly reputable. Here's an article on Yahoo from Refinery 29, quoting addressing your question as to whether sparse mention in media is equivalent to lack of due weight. And here, this is a quote from Yahoo. So Reade's accusation has opened up discourse on social media about why the mainstream media is ignoring the story. I don't understand why the extremely serious sexual assault allegations against Joe Biden are not getting significant attention outside of left media, tweeted Vox senior correspondent Zach Beauchamp. So we have the proper sources and enough of them to support the mention of this case and a new development. The sources meets RS, reliable source, requirements, and it is a violation of WP. Basically, Wikipedia has all these rules to block the addition of this material. And so this guy, Muboshku, replies, Petrarchan, The Intercept has a clear pro-Bernie bias. Okay. Mr. X supports that, yes, and an anti-establishment bias. Their political articles tend to have an invective tone, often promote marginal viewpoints. You can do better comes back. He says, if you don't play this game, we can sit here all day, talk about pro-establishment Fox, anti-establishment Huffington Post, pro-establishment CNN. Doesn't matter what slant you think you perceive, it is reliable. Basically, when someone says, you can do better. It says, someone sorted out, it's unacceptable that an assault charge explicitly laid out in verifiable interview that details behavior tangibly different than previous harassment charges not included. Here are the sources, find consensus on what is considered reliable, and let me be the first guy to put my vote against turning away The Intercept as an unreliable source. So basically, the guy lists all these sources. You have The Hill, The Federalist, Law and Crime, The Intercept, Democracy Now! And so this guy Specifico says those are not mainstream RS references. When a story has been vetted and published in mainstream RS, please show us the relevant links. So Petrarchan, they keep fighting on and on about this, and this guy is just saying, basically says that, I'm trying to see when does CNN come, it's already come up. There you go. He says, this guy here says, and the Washington Post, New York Times, any reliable sources. So if you're not the Washington Post or the New York Times, essentially it's not going to come up. They're not going to consider it as a reliable source. And so it just seems like, and I'm going to include a link to this as well as the Jimmy Dore video, but it's concerning to me, and it should be concerning to you as well, that essentially the news is, specifically those mainstream news networks are essentially are holding a monopoly, and really more so than the monopoly, they're holding the pens of history hostage, so that if anything that they write essentially can be put into Wikipedia as fact, as historical, and so anything they don't write essentially is not such the case. But the scarier part is really the fact that what they do write becomes history. So, when they write, Russiagate stuff, that's history. When they write, um, you know, I mean, anything like that, when they write that, the CARES Act saves America or whatever, that's history. When they don't write that it's like a total sellout of America, and an indebting of our future generations, you know, then that's not the case. But it is the case. But the fact that they're not writing it makes it not the case. So I mean, I hope, like, really the only thing that I'm hoping that people get out of this video is that, you know, the mainstream media should not have the keys to writing our history. Our history should be written by all of us, all sources. In fact, some of our history should not be written by the mainstream media because they have biases that prevent them from reporting certain stories correctly. Um, you know, they have. I mean, their whole budget is derived from advertising. And again, there's another video that touches on that and with Jimmy Dore. So basically, the main takeaways here: watch Jimmy Dore, and I think it's really time for us to collectively turn off from those largely unreliable sources: CNN, Fox News, ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, all of those. Just it's time to shut it down. Try to look for news on the internet. Like, make sure, and whenever you see an article from them, make sure you vet it and think about, like, who wins when they write their article like that. Yeah, just consider maybe not letting them win. All right, well, thanks for watching. I hope this was entertaining. It's almost it's past 1 here, so I'm getting a little tired. So thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe. The link below here, somewhere in this section. Like the video. Make sure to maybe share it with a friend if you think this is compelling, and leave a comment if you have any thoughts. Leave a comment, share your thoughts. If you think I'm full of shit, let me know. Hey, Youceff, you're full of shit. If you're shocked about this Wikipedia shit, be like, dude, what the fuck? I'm shocked. You can say that. If you want to just be like, boobs, or whatever, like, you can say that too. Like, just it's a pretty open space. So yeah, thanks again for watching, and see you next time.